Welcome everybody to this new HelloID webinar release of the February release. So in this webinar I'm going to show you the new features that are available in the February release that is released last Monday evening or morning, depends on your country. So we got a few new features, and normally I would always say okay, I have a vote in the chat. But this time I got three new features, two smaller ones and one really big one. So what I want to do is explain the smaller ones first, and then go to the big one, because I think we are busy with that the most of the time, and that's Persian merging inside of Persian navigation. So let's start, and if you have any questions, you can always put a question in the chat, and I will check it out between the presentations and during, maybe, if there are new questions. Okay, so for now let's start. So one of the new options we have is with access management. We have support for the refresh token inside the OpenID. And that basically means is that when you have a, let's say, an app on your mobile, and currently if you log in with HelloID, so HelloID is configured as an IDP for that app, and you have an OpenID connection between them, every time the session expires inside the app or something like that, you have to re-log in. And with this option, there's a possibility to extend the login inside the app. So the app it's possible to get a refresh token without needing to put in your new credentials or MFA or something like that. And with this, we have a couple of new settings that you can use. So if you go to an application, and let's create a new one. So in this case, I want an OpenID. We'll take the generic OpenID Connect for this case, but of course the configuration is in other ones as well if it's supported for that target application. So you do need support for the target application. And if you go to a single sign-on, you have supported scopes, and a new one is offline access. So the target application must support this as a scope, offline access, and if it does support that and it can do a refresh token, you can use this and also configure the lifetime of the token. So I can set this on 2, so that means that the app can automatically refresh the token for 2 days without until you need to log in again. So that's really handy in that kind of situations, and there are a couple of applications that makes use of this. I will check if there are any questions. No, I don't see them. So that was the first feature. The second one, that's a little bit bigger. Here we can go to a delegated form. Save. And here you can see a new option in the actions that is called clone. I have to say this new feature, the cloning delegated form feature, is only available if you have the new task management option enabled, which currently is in a beta or a preview phase. Of course, it's also on in preview environments, but you can also enable it in production. You can just send us an email, the support office or something like that. And that means that there is a new different system of running a task. So here I have a task. It's already configured. So if I go to edit here, you'll see if I go to task, instead of the add create task and with the catalog, now you have directly some scripting, and you can run this in the cloud, or you can just run it on a local agent. So this is a new way of thinking. And if you have this option, you can also clone it. So in this case, I have also a password reset form configured. So that's here, a reset password. And that has, in this case, only has a task with a little comment in it. But now I can just press the clone button, and the default one is that it puts the name clone in it, and I can say, okay, reset password for managers, let's say this. Also, it's really nice to have, I'm gonna say this has changed as well, is that we have the enable form upon clone. So that means is normally if the reset password form is enabled, maybe if you clone it, you want to make some changes. So in this case, we as default say, okay, the form isn't enabled, but you can just enable it if you want to. But let's enable it for now. Oh no, let's do it not. Let's clone it. Let's do it nicely. So this means that the whole form and also the underlying data sources are cloned. So let's do a refresh. Oh, maybe I made a mistake. Yes, I made a mistake because this form doesn't have my mistake, it doesn't have a form, so that's not useful. Let's do this one, AD clone. Yes. Let's clone this one because this one has a form. Let's do again for managers. Oh, sorry, that one had an automation task, but why? Let's go back to reset password. Sorry, my mistake. Let's delete the clone. And let's create a form. I cannot create a form with this. Okay, let's create a new one. Reset password new. And let's create a form. So in this case, I want to put in a text field, text input. Oh, sorry. What's going on? Let's say this is a password field. It's not configured properly, but in this case you know what it is. So let's save it. And now we have a new delegate form, reset password new. And if I press here clone, I can say for the managers. This is better because now I have a form enabled for it. Also, if there is a data source connected to that form, the data source is also copied. So you don't have to do that yourself again. So everything behind the form is copied. So that makes it a lot easier to create a new form and just change it, because now I can just add new elements to it and just save. And now I have two new forms. So one, of course, it isn't enabled. If I enabled it now, I have two new forms in my delegation forms. And so it's really easy to create something like a template we have. And if you want to change it, you can just create a clone of the template, change your things, and you still have the template available in your catalog. Or you want to have, okay, I have a form based on group memberships, but I want to do it a little bit differently. I want to search for a different OU or something like that. You can just clone it and change it in your data source that is loading, and you can configure it properly. Also with this new feature, we also implemented the ability to copy a form itself. So if you have a form here, let's say we have a form here and a data source is connected to it, I can also copy this form. And that's for the use case when you're using products. So if I click on clone form here, I can say, okay, clone form. I can change the name, of course, of that form. So also for managers, clone form, and it's a completely new form. New data sources are created, and you can link this to a product or assign this to a product. So in this case, it's easier instead of the whole delegated form, just to create forms to link to a product. If you're busy with the delegated form, I really recommend using the delegation manner of copying the forms in this screen. Also, as you mentioned, you don't have the clone option if there is an automation task available. I think I just discovered an issue with that, but normally you don't see the clone option, only if it's possible to clone that delegated form with form data sources and the task available in the scripting. Let's check if we have any questions. No, we don't. Let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so let's go to the third feature, and that's person merging. Also the first part of person aggregation. So let's go to provisioning. And inside the source, you will see a new option, aggregation. And let's first look at my source system. So I have a Flex source system and an HR source system. That's really important to know. So if I go to aggregation, I will see all my persons currently imported into the vault. So let's search for myself, and you'll see I have a couple of records inside the vault. And those are some of source HR, and some of them are source Flexpool. And in this case, this is why person merging is implemented. Because in this case, the same person is coming from or multiple systems, or maybe it could be that it's double registered because of some reasons. And here you can say, okay, all these records are actually one person. And normally you would do something like this in the practical use. I'm going to do a little bit different because I'm going to use my name as a primary or leading person, as you can say. And I will add a different one because else it's a little bit difficult to explain, because if the name is the same, it's a little bit difficult to understand, I think. So let's take a look at the other persons. So this means that these persons are non-leading persons, and I can merge these persons with my leading person that is selected here. And of course I can change this by just selecting a different user. So if I Abak Janssen select, it will be my leading person, and I can put persons in it. Let's take my record again. So HR, and of course if it's a practical use, I will do something like this. So pick on my record and maybe a different source system like the Flexpool, and in this case just add the record. But I don't want to do that. I want to add someone different, like let's do all in Unuma. So what I can do now is just drag and drop like this, or I can just add it like this with a button. And if I edit this, of course I always need to press apply to really save it, because if I switch on the left side it will be gone. but you will see a pending merge. And that means that this person, Alwin Unema, is pending to be merged with Rick van der Dijssel. It's me. And also there is a little warning sign that says, okay, this person will be removed when a new snapshot is created. And an enforcement will manage all entitlements for the person Alwin Unema. So that's really important to know. I will explain it more in detail in a little PowerPoint I prepared. But that means is that these two persons will be merged. If I press and apply, you'll also see here that my leading person is pending, because it's waiting for the Alwin Unema to be merged with Rick van der Dijssel, and it's only it's processed when I do a new snapshot. And if I check on Alwin Unema, it also has a pending, and if I click on it, it says, okay, when a new fault snapshot is created, this will happen. The person contacts will be added to another person, and the person will be removed when a new snapshot is created. So all the contracts of Alwin Unema will be added to my contracts. And that's the whole idea. So now I will run the snapshot. Now if I search for Alwin Unema, it's not there anymore. But if I search for myself, you will see, okay, this record is merged. And if I click on it, it's merged with Alwin Unema. So that means these two people are merged. And that means that I see the person information on the level of like say a business address, contact details, name and things like that from my Rick van der Dijssel. But the contracts are merged. And you can just see that easily just by clicking on a few person details. Go to my contracts and you will see this contract is merged. And also something else happened, and that is that normally my contract of myself was primary. But in this case, the contract of Alwin Unema has a higher ranking in the ordering of the contracts. So that contract has become the primary contract, and that also means that there is a different manager, because now the manager will be Amir Atkinson, the primary manager, and not Bianca Munez. And that's because of the hierarchy, of course. So that's also really important to know, that all the contracts are merged to a single person, and that's me, Rick van der Dijssel. But over all these contracts, we are calculating the primary contract, and also with the primary manager calculation. So that's really important to know. Also, if I want to look at the other details of Alwin Unema, I can always click on this and I will see his personal information and also the contracts. So I can always see the old information from Alwin Unema itself. And that helps you a lot, because you can just switch and look at different views from here. So always, before you do a merge, always check out the eye. It's helpful to see all the information available. Okay, let's check if you have any questions. The question is, can you auto merge based on something like employee ID? No, you cannot with this functionality. So this is a multiple steps of functionality that we're going to add for person aggregation. So the first step is this one is only manual. The second step will be auto approval. So that means that you are getting suggestions about the people that you want to merge. And the third step is a automatically merge, and that could be based on an employee ID or multiple records. Can you prevent the creation of supposedly duplicate accounts in the target system and wait before merging by hand? No, currently you cannot, but that's in the next step. So in the approval and the automatic, it will wait for running executions of entitlements if we see a highly suggested duplicate person. But that will come in the approval will come in the April release, if I'm correctly. Else check on the roadmap, and the automatic will be, I think, somewhere in June or July or something like that. But it's not on the roadmap yet. It will be put on the roadmap later on. Okay, Logan, I will come back from the question: does merging revoke and unmanage or only unmanage the entitlements? I will come back to that. I will explain that later. This could be used. This could be used to mitigate the need to create an additional account in the same system and inherit the account to internal. So yeah, what it basically can be used for is I have the same persons or maybe identities in different systems or maybe in the same system. And normally we supply entitlements based on your contract information. So hey, you're working in a department with a particular function or a title, something like that. And then based on that information, we will give you rights. So what this does is it helps you put in all the contract information into a single person. That's why it's person aggregation. So you can include all your rights and also only supply a single account for that person with all the correct rights and the entitlements permissions. What happens when the added contract disappears? So if the added contracts, I assume that you mean that the non-leading person contract disappears. In that case, so of the one of Alwin Unema, in that case, the contract is also gone on the Rick van der Leijsen person, so it will not be there anymore. So in each import, we just merge the contracts that are on the person. Another question is, and what happens to the managed contract when the primary person disappears? I will come to that later on. Even de Kruijf asks, so if someone is first in the system for externals and becomes internal personnel and moves to the HR system, Even that could be the case. So it could be that you say, okay, the person comes from HR first or something like that, or comes from a different system, and you can merge the other records, and then it will keep their account because the person is still there. But there are some exceptions with the leading person that I will explain later on. Let me first go back to the presentation. Because I think there are a lot of questions that I will answer if I go further, but I just want to make sure that everything was clear up until now. So what we have here is I just merged those persons, and if I go back, this also helps you, I think. If I search, let's say, for myself, and I go to my merge record, I also can see in my history view that my contract is added. And this is the contract, of course, from the other person of Alwin. And also in this case, my primary contract was changed, but the contract here of Alwin, that's added. And you can also see that in the history view. What's also better is if we go to the snapshots, we can also see that a person is aggregated. So a person is added, so two persons are one person, actually. And if I go to the changes in my snapshot, I can also see that on Unama is that the person was removed from the snapshot and the person contacts were added to another person. And for myself, I can see, okay, a contract is added and a primary contract is changed. So you can always see these changes with person aggregation, merging persons. You can see that back in the and in the person history, and of course in the snapshot history. Of course, I cannot see the person of Alwyn because it doesn't exist anymore because it's merged with myself. But if I want to see the details of Alwyn, I have to go to aggregation again, search for myself because I know it's merged, and here I can see it again. Then the question of the entitlements, because it could be the case that myself and Alwyn both got entitlements already assigned. So let's say we both have an account assigned in Active Directory. That means that if I merge Alwyn with myself, that all his entitlements of Alwyn will be unmanaged. But the ones of the leading person, myself, will not be managed. They will still be the same. So that means that we have a sort of unmanaged account left, and all the other permissions that are assigned based on the contracts of Alwyn, preferably I will get because the contract is now below my person. So probably I will get some permissions based on the contract of Unama over his title or his department. Maybe it's the same, then I won't get any permissions. But in most cases, all the permissions of Alwyn Unama will be transferred to myself, but only because I grant new entitlements based on the contract. With the exception, of course, of account if I already have that one. So it's good to know that the non-leading persons that are merged to a leading person, those entitlements that are already assigned will be unmerged, and we don't do any revokes or something like that. So keep that in mind, that if you have two accounts, one account will be there in your target system that's unmanaged. Of course, if we go a step further with the approval and also with the automatic assignment, we will do this before an account is created. And we will stop the execution when we see, okay, this is the chance is really high that it's a duplicate person, and we will stop the process of execution. And then you can say, okay, this is really the ones that has to be merged, and then not an account will be created for your non-leading persons. And in the case of automatically, it will be automatically, and it will not be. It doesn't require a step to click on the button. But that's more in the future. That's not in this feature currently, but that's how it works in the future. So please keep in mind that the entitlements of the non-leading persons are unmanaged. Of course, I can also merge multiple persons, right? I can just do whatever I want. So only an increase of the contracts will be resolved in this. But please be careful and really know what you're doing with this, because it is also difficult to track things if you merge them, because all the entitlements will be assigned to myself, and of course you see the contracts of Alwyn Unama that are merged and that are previous of that person, but it still is a little bit more difficult to track than just a simple one-on-one relationship between those. Let me to give you an overview. I create a little presentation, maybe that helps as well. So let's start that one. So just as a summary, we have a person A, and that person has person data, and with person data I mean contact details, business details, maybe a street or something like that, name, birth date, things like that are really connected to a person. It has contract data, That's his start and end date, of course, the title, department, division, team, so on and so on. And you have entitlements. And in this case, we also have a person B, which is actually the same person as person A. But he also has person data, contract data, and entitlements. And what we want to do is merge those persons because it's one. So we have to assign a leading person. So in this case, the leading person is person A. And what happens then is we merge B to A. And with that, we create a kind of a container person A, which includes person B. And we say, okay, the person data of person B isn't relevant anymore. So the person data only of person A is used. And what we want to do is we want to take the contract data of person B and add it to person A. So what we have, if we create a snapshot, is we have a person A which contains a kind of a reference to person B, still with his entitlements, and we have a person A with his own person data and the contract data of person A plus B, and also his own entitlements. And if we do a enforcement, then we go to a different step, because with an enforcement we say, okay, we have the person B like a reference, and we're going to push the entitlements out. And then we're going to say, okay, with this we're going to unmanage those entitlements. So we don't do anything again with those entitlements. And in most of the cases that means, because of the contract data is added to person A, because A and B are summed in the contract data, that most of the times means that there are more entitlements granted for person A, because it's a new department or a new title. But that's not always the case, but it could be in theory. So that's really important to know. Let me check if there are any questions. Cool. Why not provide the option to revoke accounts in target systems? We didn't choose for that because in the first option, if we want to do it automatically, it's really tricky because you don't know what you are revoking. So if we want to go to an automatic system, it's really tricky in the long run. And also, I think in most cases, if it can only go wrong if you already have an account. And I think in most cases, maybe not in this situation yet, but if we have the auto approval and also the automatically, you will never get that second account because it's detected beforehand. It will be detected before the second account is created. So for now, it's a better decision to do it like this for the long run. And that's the reason why we didn't provide the option to revoke the accounts in the target system. Also pretty dangerous, of course, because if you think a merge and you don't know exactly what account is connected to what person, you will revoke accounts that you don't want to revoke. I think in the later stages, and that's way further down the road, we want to do something like reconciliation, where we check what we manage in HelloID and what isn't managed by HelloID, and then you can remove or delete stuff like that. Because we can say, okay, this isn't managed by HelloID. Do you still want to use that, or do you want to remove those resources in AD or any system? And then we can help you with the unmanaged stuff to clear up that unmanaged stuff. So that's the reason why we do it like this. There was also a question about what happens to the managed contact when the primary person disappears. Okay, This is a little bit different between a non-leading person and a leading person. So I go back to the presentation. Let's go back. So in this case we have Rick van der Dijssel, which is a leading person, and Alwin, which is a non-leading person. If Alwin isn't there in the import, so it isn't there anymore, what happens is currently nothing until Alwin is not imported for a maximum of 5 imports. And that number also depends on how many imports Alwin was, because if it's a new person in the previous import and it is removed in the import after that, it will just be in there for 1 import instead of 5. So please be careful with that, but it means that we have a history of 5 imports where he can be gone and can come back and nothing happens. So if he comes back, he will just be assigned as a non-leading person to Rick, of course. But in the meantime, his contracts will be gone. So that means that the contracts of Alwin in the person Rick van der Dijssel will be gone because we don't have the data anymore. So the primary contract in this case will be switched to myself, Rick van der Dijssel. So only 1 contract. If it's back, it will just be assigned as a non-leading person, and the contract, of course, is back again, and it will change the primary contract again. This is a little bit different than the case of a leading person, because if a leading person is missing from a single import, the configuration of the person aggregation will be removed, and that means that Alwin Unuma will be a person again. So it will be created as a person again, and then it will be assigned the entitlements. So it's really important that, of course, all the data of the import is correctly, because if it switches, it could have an impact on your person aggregation. With this, there's also a nice side effect, is if you have just a single person missing from the vault. In the previous versions, what we had is if a person didn't come back with the same external ID, a new person was created with the same display name, and all the entitlements will be revoked, and all the entitlements will also be granted for that person, it looked like, because there were 2 different persons. With this change, we also have this fallback for 5 imports. So that means is if this record, which is not merged or anything, is missing from the import and is back on the next import, it will try to revoke the rights, of course, because my person is missing. But in the next run, it will not do anything anymore. It will just remove the revoke records, and it will say, okay, he's back, and that's just fine. So that's a really big step and change, because then it makes it easier to, if a person is just missing in a single import, it will start to revoke, and hopefully it will hit the threshold, and then in the next run it's back again, and all the revokes are gone. It's just the same situation as before. So that's a really big change, and again, that's also up to 5 imports. Let's go back to the questions. I think there are no new questions, right? Let me check. Auto merge, I answered. Can you prevent the creation of supposedly duplicate accounts in target system? Yeah, that's more the case when we have approval. So now you have to merge by hand, and maybe the account is already created. But in the next step, we have auto approval, and then the execution will be stopped of the entitlements of that person. And you can click on the bottom to merge them, and then not a new account is created, but then the contracts are merged, and the other person will get the rights for that. So that's really handful if we have that approval step. Does merging revoke? Okay. So merging only unmanage the entitlements and not revoke any entitlements. We discussed that. Use Delegated. Yeah, that also. What happens when the added contract disappears? We explained that also. So I think we have everything. So if there aren't any questions anymore, I would like to thank you. So thank you for watching, and you can also subscribe below somewhere here to our YouTube channel, and hit the bell icon to never miss a webinar. Also, if you still have any questions, you can contact us, of course, or your support office, and we will answer your questions. And also there is documentation available on docs.helloid.com. And if you want to see, like I mentioned, the auto approval features and things like that, you can check in on the roadmap, what's the planning with that. And also there are some other smaller changes, and you can see them in the changelog on the roadmap. If you go to the roadmap, you can go to launched, and there you can select the release, and normally it's the latest. And then you can also see the release notes, so there are more details in that as well. Not on this particular case because that's in the documentation. So thank you for watching, and till the next time.